We are live. Yay. Hello, everyone. I'm Allie Wyatt. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective, the 10th House, which is our private membership community for founders of that are really looking to level up and who are in all different industries and looking to connect with other founders to help navigate their way in a ways-like experience for other founders. And we are actually closing out our cohort on the 29th. So your last chance to get applications in is on Friday. That's this Friday, September 29th. So definitely do that if you want to join us. But I'm super excited to be here today with Lisa Carmen Wang, who I've actually been following for a really long time. I love what she talks about. I love her passion as well as her investment, pun intended, in women and wealth and ensuring that they can get there. And she's just recently written a book that we're going to get into today. But we're going to talk. Well, we're good. We're good. We're going to talk a lot about what's in that book and sort of the lessons that she's learned in her amazing career today. So I'm going to start off by sharing your bio, Lisa, and then we're going to get into some questions that I have for you. And then we had a lot of community members also submit their questions. But first off, Lisa Carmen Wang is the founder and CEO of Bad Bitch Empire, a community investment platform building unapologetic worth and wealth for women. She is a four-time USA national champion and Hall of Fame gymnast, turned serial entrepreneur, angel investor, venture capitalist, and certified executive coach and global speaker. She has been named Forbes 30 Under 30 in Venture Capital, Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 Most Powerful Women, and more. She began her career at a $15 billion hedge fund, is a graduate of Yale University, and has a lifelong mission to help women build unapologetic worth and wealth. In her new book, she empowers women from budding entrepreneurs to career veterans and everything in between to break free like she did from Good Girl Brainwashing, which is grounded in perfectionism, people pleasing, and permission asking. And boy, oh boy, I think every single person on this stream can relate to that. So I want to jump in. So you have these incredible commandments that you have laid out. But I want to sort of dig into them. One of them, Commandment 7, is a bad bitch loves money. Can you talk a little bit about like what inspired you to get into this and to help women to build wealth? And like you said, you put worth, it seems like, very intentionally before wealth. So I'd be interested to sort of hear about the meaning behind that and the reason you got into all of this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the reason I got into all of it, I mean, I'll start with my definition of a bad bitch, which is a woman who unapologetically takes charge of her body, her boundaries, and her bank account. She knows what she wants. She gets what she wants every damn time. And the idea, the point of being a bad bitch is like also reclaiming the word bitch, which is a word that has been hurled against women when you label a woman who is perceived as cold, aggressive, rude, pushy, too outspoken. And the reality is that kind of woman is actually a woman who knows what she wants, has clear opinions, is unwilling to tolerate disrespect, and walks away from things that doesn't see her value, and just, is unapologetic in pursuing her dreams and prioritizes herself. And so the word bitch is a word that has been used to weaponize a woman's power against her. And so the reclamation of the word bitch, and especially of a bad bitch, is really just reclaiming our power to say there is no shame, there is no guilt in wanting to be unapologetically strong, powerful, and like being a badass woman. Especially in business. And I think that I intentionally put the word worth in there because I do think that there is a deep, deep conditioning, and this is created by Good Girl Brainwashing, which are all the societal media messages that train women to play small, be people pleasing, permission asking, be submissive to the status quo, and just like be nice. And that is really teaching us that we are not allowed to dream big, that we are not worthy of prioritizing our own goals above what everybody else wants for us, what society, what status quo says we need to be or what we should be. And so for me, I talk about in this, so the commandment you talk about, a bad bitch loves money, is that I think that there's so many of us who feel shame for wanting to be unapologetically rich and wealthy and have that financial freedom and that abundance because we've been so trained in scarcity. And we tie this connection to having money not so much to freedom, but as in, oh, I'm afraid to ask for more money because then he might think I'm X. I'm afraid to command more value or ask for more funding because then they will think X. And so I went through that for so long where I was just afraid to charge more. I was afraid to ask for more, even though I was working twice as hard overtime. I just, and we see this all the time, women working twice as hard for half the pay. And the idea of loving money is something that I like to equate. I use this metaphor of a relationship, like a personal romantic relationship. So in a healthy relationship, you nurture each other, you help each other grow, you give each other space to evolve, you invest in each other, right? And you want the best for the other person. In a toxic relationship, you're insecure, you are possessive, you're like, don't leave the house, you're afraid they're going to leave you, so you hoard it, you save it, and then you're afraid to let it go. And you also are avoidant, like, I don't want to deal with this, it gives me too much anxiety. And for a lot of us as women, we just have been taught to have a very toxic relationship with money, given that 90% of money articles targeted at men are about investing in growth, and 90% of money articles targeted at women are about saving and spending less. And so there's so much wrapped up in this question, but overall, I think that the reason I have bank account as a good third of the book after is that, and also that it comes after body and it comes after boundaries, is that it doesn't matter how many tactics you teach someone when it comes to negotiation. If at your core, you don't believe you're good enough, you don't believe you're worthy of the money, it never comes. And so that's really where a lot of this inner work comes in. And what I talk about in the book is it's called the Bad Bitch Business Bible, but what it really is like a subconscious reprogramming of your own narrative and self-trust, self-belief, and self-love.
I love that. And it's so true that the first thing we need to do is program ourselves to believe that we are worth it. So now I see the intentional beforehand, because really wealth only comes, it seems like, until when you're ready for it and you feel like you have the worth for it. Can you talk a little bit about good girl brainwashing and how to know, first of all, if you are good girl brainwashed? I don't know if you have sort of any self tests to make yourself more aware of it, but then also, what are some ways, tactics that maybe you talk about in the book to dispel that, to get rid of that brainwashing?
So, I mean, all of the good girl habits. So a lot of times, the good girl habits like submission, like following the rules, obeying, listening to other people, waiting for approval and permission. All of that actually can be helpful when you are a young girl growing up, because that is what gets you good grades. That is what gets you a good job. It gets you a pat on the head. Your boss says, good job. And the thing is, you realize that at a certain point, the patterns that served you as a girl actually become severely detrimental to you as a woman, especially if you're a woman in business with big goals. And all of those things actually turn into perfectionism and people pleasing, and furthermore, not speaking up, not advocating for yourself, not negotiating your pay, and settling for way less than you deserve. And the genesis of good girl brainwashing, like a lot of times it just, you will know you are under the good girl brainwashing spell if there are points in your life when you wonder, like, why didn't I speak up that time? Why did I allow someone to cross my boundaries? Like, why do I feel so bad after I, again, didn't prioritize myself. And so it does reflect in your bank account, right? It's like at the end of the day, it's like I think what's happening so everywhere is like women are burnt out. We're working so hard. We're trying to juggle everything, and we're still not seeing the payoff in terms of what we believe we deserve, and we're not speaking up about it. And I think that the first glimmer of your inner bad bitch voice is that voice that says, I think I deserve better. I think I deserve more. And what accompanies it immediately after is a feeling that women have not been allowed to feel. And that feeling is anger.
Mm.
As women, there is nothing more powerful than a woman's anger, like truly the ability to express that. And there's a reason why they say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, because we have all seen what a truly angry woman can accomplish. But again, that's another thing that we're afraid to be, because it's labeled as crazy, right? It's labeled as emotional and dramatic. And again, all these labels that are actually weaponizing a woman's power against her full emotional range. And so what I think one of the biggest challenges that has happened to us in the world of business especially is that we have been forced to be put in a tiny box that is only a fraction of our true emotional and like the range that we are capable of as women, because we're so afraid of what other people think. So this fear voice of like, ask yourself, are there moments where I really want to do something, but I stop myself because I'm afraid of what other people think about me? And so when you actually allow yourself to tap into that anger, and you can do that in the privacy of your own home, right? You're like, wait, let me like actually get really mad about all those little paper cuts, all those times I was overlooked, undervalued, assumed as inferior, and I just like let that slide. And that is the first spark that you can actually use to transmute that into a different kind of energy. And that's an energy of like passion, of purpose. Like, I don't care what happens. I don't care what that guy thinks of me, because he's not paying me. He's not investing in me. Why do I care about your opinion? I have work to do. And so I think that you can even like sense the difference in energy, I think, as I'm speaking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But what are some ways that you can get rid of that, right? It's channeling that energy when you are at home, when you are by yourself, and taking the anger and creating it into something else. Are there any sort of other tactical ways that you have seen be effective in a regular sort of everyday practice, right? As a founder, for example, and sort of not being the good girl.
Yeah. So there's the internal side, and then there is the negotiation tactic that I always recommend women to go with. So I'll start with the tangible money part. So the first thing is, I call it a bad bitch benchmark. And this is where you take what you think is your hourly rate. So I want everyone to mentally think, what is my hourly rate right now? And once you have that number, you need to take that number and you need to double it. That is your number. And the reason that is your number, it's because over 60% of women never negotiate the first offer. Women negotiate less than half the amount of times that men negotiate. So if you think of when you start your career, and over time, right, all these little paper cuts that actually end up, you are paid exponentially less than the man next to you, who is probably making exponentially more than what you are making for the same, if not less, amount of work. And what we're doing is that we are still afraid to ask for more, for fear, again, of seeming like a bitch or XYZ. And especially if you're an entrepreneur or a coach or a consultant, you're working for yourself. When you are creating packages, when you are negotiating, someone could be selling a marketing package for $2,000, and that guy could be selling a marketing package for $20,000. It's still a similar service, right? But the difference is, at the end of the day, that that person decided to charge more because they were absolutely sure in the value that they could deliver. And so a lot of times when you think of, we're so busy thinking about, oh, I wonder if people will pay. I wonder if they'll, if this is too high. And rather than thinking, okay, I have a very valuable product, I have a very valuable service, and I'm going to find the right person who really needs this. And I'm going to do an incredible job. And I know the value I bring to the table, and it's going to cost them. And it's just an exchange of value for that price, right? And so I do think that that's one area in which not trusting your intuition is around the barometer of how much you are worth in value. And whatever you think it is, it's like, oh, wait, before I send that number, what would happen if I just doubled it? I think you're on mute.
Thank you. I was going to say, I love that. I think it's super helpful because it gives us, like you said, a benchmark to sort of reach for and be a go-to when we sort of think about how can we dispel the good girl that is sort of embedded in all of us. My other question is around, you talk about the importance of investing in female-led businesses and in general, as bad bitches, investing. Can you talk about why you think it's so important, and sort of ways that people can do it in their regular life? Or if you're a founder and you're looking to get investment, ways that they might think about sort of harnessing that and being more impactful in their success in getting it.
Yeah. So the first thing is when you aren't investing and you're keeping money in a savings account, you are losing money every day due to the savings rate being less than the inflation rate. So it's the equivalent of just burning your money, right? And just losing it every day. And the second part of that, once you realize that, okay, if I actually let it sink in that I am losing money by letting it just sit there, that the most important thing, the most powerful generator of wealth is investing. So there are over $100 trillion of assets under management, of which women manage less than 1% of that. And that means across venture capital, private equity, hedge funds, women fund managers make up less than 1% of fund managers. And so that is an insane statistic. And we talk so much about, oh, well, women don't receive funding, only 2%. But it's also because there are not enough female check writers. And there is a reason why the most wealthy, the most powerful men are in those industries, are investors in private equity, in hedge funds, and venture capital, because that is where the wealth is made. It is exponential wealth. And the way in which men have been taught to make money is that if Joe starts a company, Joe says to his friend, hey, John, want to invest in my company? And John says, that's a good idea. Okay, sure. But John realizes that in order for Joe's company to be successful, he needs to bring in friends who also can put in money. So John goes to Tom and Tim and Bob and Jim, and he says, hey, guys, let's go into this together. We're going to get equity in Joe's company, and then it's great. So then they all put money in Joe. And so now they know if Joe has sufficient capital to grow his business, they're all going to make more money at the end. And as women, we've been taught the opposite. We're like one woman for herself, like there's not enough capital, there's not enough room. So there's a scarcity mentality that's been very, very difficult to break. And at the end of the day, it's like we can talk all day about the 2% in funding, but and that men should invest. But the reality is they're not investing. They could if they wanted to, but they're not. And so I think that there is a real conversation to be had about the fact that there is a massive financial opportunity in investing in female-led businesses, because 40% of the unicorns, Fortune 500 companies, were built during a recession. And for the first time in history, we have women that are actually building products for women, services for women, right? Technology that is going to serve women. And anything that is undervalued, this is just a fundamental investment principle. If it is undervalued, there is an arbitrage opportunity for investors to take when something is undervalued. That means that there needs to be a price correction. And so I invest in female-led businesses and I teach women how to invest because I think that's the only way for us to actually build wealth in our lifetime and actually start moving wealth in a different direction, because just begging for pennies is not actually going to make any difference. And so I think the big rewiring is that even if you're an entrepreneur, male entrepreneurs are also simultaneously angel investing because they want another income stream. They want their money to be working for them, even when they're working on their companies. And now we have the legal structures and the technology that can allow anyone to invest, starting as little as $100 into like small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and startups.
And what are some of the tools? So say you're not an accredited investor. What are some tools or places that people might be able to go to actually start investing in those $100 checks, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, at the Bad Witch Empire, that is where we curate investments, female-led, impact-driven investments. And so there's startup sites like WeFunder, like Republic, and there are tons of these fractional investment sites. The problem is it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
You go on there and you're like, I have no idea how to read any of this. I don't know what the returns or the terms are. And also there is the need to learn how to diversify. So what I also teach women is you can diversify a portfolio of female-led businesses that is not just stocks. Like we all know we have to invest in the ETF. Okay. We put in a Vanguard and now we're done. But the reality is there is also small business loans, just like if you're investing in real estate and you start getting interest back, right? You start getting 10%, 15%, 20% interest back. You can do that with small business loans with investing in female-led businesses. For example, I've been looking at a female-led donut shop that I'm really excited about, and they're launching. They have great financials. Their projections are on point. It's not a venture capital investment, but the terms of the investment are that there's a guarantee of 1.4x what I put in. I put in 1,000, I'm going to get 1,400 back, and I'm going to get that back within the next year. So like, why would I not put 1,000 in if I could get 1,400 back?
Yeah.
And so this is all stuff. That's a lower risk version versus a startup that you might see wait 5-10 years for return, right? So you want to change the different risk and return profiles. And there's really fun ways to do this, especially in community. So I think I'm really excited about it. And also I'll get free donuts from it. So.
Amazing. Now, on that point, so being able to invest in a donut shop, like that sounds like a dream, by the way. And it also, for the owner of that donut shop, they're not going to go out and be able to get venture capital, like you said. So what are there some instruments or vehicles that you recommend, or like how would the donut shop owner be able to get money like that? It's part of a loan that you're investing in?
Yeah, so it's part of a loan, and then there's small business loans. So this is if you are interested in this, I can talk more about the details of it on my next week. Actually, I'm going to give a little sneak peek. If you go to badwitchempire.com, sign up for the newsletter. I'm actually partnering with a bank to give away a bunch of small business loans.
Amazing.
So if you are a small medium business owner, and it's just no strings attached capital. So I'm really excited to partner with them and do that. But yeah, so there are a bunch of different instruments that, I mean, I'm actually in the process of putting together a resource for it. And there's even just looking for alternative options, like search up small business loans, search up like grants, search up different things different ways to get cash. I think that there is a collective shift right now out of venture capital in that it used to be sexy. I mean, it's still sexy, right? To get the TechCrunch headlines and get tens of millions of dollars. But at the end of the day, that is the most expensive loan you can take. And you will have investors on your back, pushing you to grow at a hyper speed, to get to an IPO, to get to an exit. And I think the reality is the majority of entrepreneurs including the majority of female entrepreneurs, are not building scalable, venture fundable businesses. It
Right.
is just because it's been in the vernacular for so long. So I think it's also really important for women who are building your businesses to ask yourself, like, really do the research of, like, is my business something that should actually seek venture funding? Or is it actually better for me if I know I'm going to start generating revenue like quite quickly to get a
Right.
loan because I just need some initial upfront capital, and then I know I can start paying that back to my investors much sooner than 5-10 years.
So I want to sort of shift gears because I also want to dive a little bit more into that. We have some audience questions, specifically around some of the SBA loans, but also just bootstrapping, all the stuff on finance. But I do want to go back to the foundation that's in your book and really talk about body and worth again, because like you said, that's important to sort of make sure is intact first. So when it comes to bodies, can you talk a little bit of how women can let go of shame, own their unique voice, and not apologize for taking up space?
Yeah. I have an exercise that I do with my coaching clients. It's in my book too. It's called the Bad Bitch Body Challenge. And it is a challenge that I've put many, many women through. And in this challenge, you have to stand in front of the mirror completely naked and do a body scan from top to bottom and notice all of the negative things you say to yourself. And then you have to write them down. So the women who do this exercise come back, they're like, I was bawling. I just,
Sounds
I,
terrifying, to be honest.
yeah, they're, they're like, I was so hateful to myself. I didn't realize like how much I just like, how uncomfortable it was for me to just stand there silently looking in the full length mirror naked. Like it's like, try to even look at yourself in the eyes. It is so difficult. And what that brings out is this awareness of a deep, deep programmed self-loathing that
Mm.
society has really put in us, that we're constantly thinking, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not young enough, I'm not old enough, I'm not this, I'm not curvy enough, like whatever du jour, trend there is. And I talk about this because it's like, what does your body have anything to do with business? And I say it has everything to do with it, because if you can't love the woman in the mirror, like, how are you going to show up in the boardroom as the most powerful self? How are you, if you hate the woman that you see, how in the world do you think you're going to raise $1 million? Like, if you can't even look at yourself. And so the work that I think is so important, and especially at a time when we all feel like, I'm so busy, I'm so stressed, I don't have time to do these things, because as high achieving women, we're like, oh, self-love, like, that's, yeah, I get it, self-care, okay, I'll take a bath, I'll go to the spa. But the real work is learning how to be your own best friend, learning how to be your own cheerleader, and like really being okay if you thought about it and you're like, what if everything was taken away? Your awards, your job title, your company, your funding, your bank account, um, like everything. And like, even like, let's say you didn't have your closest friends and family to help you or support you, would you be okay standing in front of that mirror and being like, I got you?
Mm.
And if you don't got you, then you need to work on that, like, obsessively, because then and only then can you really go out there and raise the funding, kick the ass that you need to kick.
Wow, that is incredibly powerful. And I'm gonna try to do that, although it sounds terrifying. But it's true, you have to have your own back at the end of the day. Um, and going a step further too, and now sort of looking outward, how do you consistently say no to toxic people, work, environments, maybe the wrong clients, right? Like, how do you spot those wrong clients? Because sometimes I think if you're having a negotiation and you are trying to up that price and there are times when the client can't meet it, or maybe they don't want to meet it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know what is right? What's worth fighting
Yeah.
for, negotiating for, et cetera. And then I do
Yeah.
want to get into negotiation too, because that's a question from one
Yeah.
of the members.
I this is a very, it's a multi-pronged question, because it also depends on what kind of business you are creating, because I do think purpose-driven entrepreneurs have a harder time with this,
Yeah.
because we really want to help, and this desire to help always lowers our prices, because we're like, oh, like I feel bad and I just really, I really want to help. And so there is a fine balance of knowing what your boundary is and knowing that, listen, I can still help this person, but it will just be in a different capacity. And so
Mhm.
I think again, it starts with first defining for yourself, like, who is the persona, the core customer persona, client persona that you want to serve? Why do you want to serve that person? Does it really light you up to serve that person? And what are the tendencies of someone who is just outside of that persona, right? So it's like, maybe it's too broad to say, I want to help women. There's lots of different women,
Yeah.
right? Even like, I want to help entrepreneurs. It's like, what kind of entrepreneurs? Like B2B SaaS entrepreneurs, small business entrepreneurs? Is it like e-commerce entrepreneurs? And I think that if you the one thing I've found, especially about building a business, is like, a lot of times we're almost afraid to niche down, because we're like, oh, but it could be so big. I could do all these things, right? And if you just imagine, like, even creating offer. So if you're like, I work with e-commerce entrepreneurs in raising their Series A, which is the hardest part, the hardest for women to get through Series A. So now, let's say you can only work with 5 high-end clients. So you're like, okay, I love e-commerce. I love female entrepreneurs. I love working in the fundraising space. Well, if you are Series A e-commerce female focused, that woman's gonna be like, oh my God, she's the perfect person for me. And you can charge significantly more, right? Than if you're just like, I help all entrepreneurs fundraise.
Right. Right. You're giving us really good advice at FSC. At FSC. I'm like, oh, I feel like you're speaking directly to us. No, that's incredibly helpful. And it's true. It's very scary to niche down and really think, okay, I'm going after a smaller market now. But now you can add more value to a
Mhm.
very specific segment. And therefore you can drive up the price, because it's also, there's fewer people, if you just do the math, that are actually doing that. So
Yeah.
um, that's incredibly helpful. I'm going to jump into some of our audience questions, because there are a few, and I think you'd be incredibly helpful at answering these. But Stephanie P asked, can you tell us about your most challenging negotiation? What was the scenario and how did you navigate it?
My most challenging. So I think a couple a couple things come to mind. I actually feel like challenging isn't necessarily the word that I was using, because so when I first entered the crypto industry, remember crypto? So it's where there was, obviously so many people making money, and I made money in crypto, but not by investing in crypto. I lost money by investing in crypto, but I made money by selling my services to crypto guys in
Smart.
marketing, in community building, it's like the what is it, the shovels, right? The people
Yeah.
who made the money in the gold rush are actually the people who sell the shovels. And I really wanted to enter into space. So the first crypto consulting gig that I got was, I did my benchmark, so I doubled my price, and I was like, this is what I charge for branding. And they came back with a quarter of what I asked for.
Hmm.
And I was like, I feel very insulted in my mind. But I pushed back, and but see, the thing is, I knew that I needed one client under my roster, and it was a very good company. And I was like, when I'm entering into a new space, you do need some credibility to say, like, I work with this company, and then you leverage that to the next one.
Yeah.
So I ended up pushing back, and I asked for a little over half of my initial offer. So it was like around 60%. And they ultimately agreed to it. So what I learned from that was, had I come in with my original price, they probably would have asked for a quarter of like that 50%. But the fact that I doubled it, I ended up with like a little more than my 50%. So it was just a matter of like, in the conversation that I had was,
Did you
well,
feel good about that?
I felt good. Yeah. I felt good for that first one, because then I leveraged that to make a lot more with future clients,
Got
because I
it.
was like, I worked with them. Here are the results that I got. So I was like, especially if you are entering into a new space, or you're like, I really want this brand under my client roster,
Yeah.
like, it's okay. But yeah, I stood really firm on like, well, this is what I can deliver. You don't have anybody else who can do it like this. Like, you
Right.
can see all these things I've done in previous other industries. And so I think that the biggest thing, like, I didn't feel like that was necessarily a challenge. I was just like a little bit pissed off, and I was like, you just don't see my value, and like, I need to then tell you what my value is, and I know for a fact that you need this. So it's like the energy of like, when you go into a negotiation, you have the upper hand if you are willing to walk away.
Yeah.
Because then if you know that you always have options, that you can walk away. And I say, a bad bitch always has options. Like, even if you don't actually have an option, like, you have to believe that you always have options. Because that's the only kind of energy you can bring into negotiation, and really stand your value and say, like, this is like my last offer, and this is what I can do.
And when you're negotiating, do you come in like sort of knowing this is my ceiling or this is my floor? Here's my breaking point, and know that there's going to be some back and forth. Like, what is your approach?
So my approach is always ask for more than I'm comfortable with. So,
Yeah.
as I have been, as I'm now embarking on my public speaking, I'm doing some, brand deals that I have no idea how to structure, like, paid Instagram like deals. Like, I've never pursued an influencer path, and that's
Yeah.
not the direction that I wanted. But I was like, hey, extra income, why not? So for example, I had a recent conversation with a brand that wanted to work with me, and they're like, we would love for you to post these things and share this message with your community. And I was like, okay, great. What's your budget? And they said, well, we're actually not paying any of the others for this, because they're getting this benefit. And I said, okay, well, um, what's your budget? And they're like, oh, well, we can definitely figure out some sort of budget. And I was like, do you have a budget? And they're like, why don't you propose something? So I was like, okay. So one, I never would have gotten a budget if I didn't ask, because
Yeah.
even they weren't even paying the others, right? And then I asked, so I just was like, how much do I want to get paid as an influencer for this first deal? And so I just put together, I didn't really even do math. I was like, I think this feels good, because this feels too little, this feels good. And then I doubled it. And then I came back, and then they just said, okay, we don't have that much. But in addition, so here's the other thing. It's not just about doubling it, being like, okay, F you. Like, it is, this is my price. These are all the deliverables that I'm going to deliver you. And I've put a lot of thought into this. So I wrote a long thing of, here's all the things that I'm going to do. I already studied your site. Here's my approach to this. Here's why I think it'll resonate with my community. And then they pushed it down a little bit. Yeah, for me, it's just because every negotiation is so different, right?
Yeah.
And if I felt like it was too little, then I would just say no and then ask for more.
Yeah. We only have a couple minutes. And I know that a lot of people asked about, how do you negotiate? How do you, from a tactical basis, continue to build up your revenue? How do you get money from investors? as now a founder, right, and coming from the hedge fund space and now an author, what are sort of the best pieces of advice that you've gotten over the years that maybe you included in your book that you want to share with founders that are on the line today?
Tactical or?
One could be tactical, one could be more broad sweeping. Like sometimes I pose this as what's your philosophy, right? That sort of guides you as you are going through and sort of building businesses and building wealth.
So I always say that a woman steps into her full power, not when she is finally given permission to do so, but when she realizes she never needed permission in the first place. And to that point, money does not flow towards perfection, it flows towards power. So instead of spending all this time getting ready, finalizing all the perfect details, waiting for someone to give you permission to take the leap, to take the action, to ask for more, because no one's going to give it to you. You need to look in the mirror and give yourself the permission to just move forward. And no matter how scared you are, hit publish, hit send, ask, just put yourself in those situations. And the worst that can happen is someone says no, someone doesn't like you. And you just have to remember, if you are not paying me, if you are not investing in my business, if you are not helping me grow, your opinion of me does not matter, because my opinion of myself is the most important one. And if I know I'm doing a good job, and if I know what I'm doing is purpose driven and impactful, and I'm doing the very best that I can, then that's what matters to me.
Love it. This is so beautiful. I feel like I've learned so many lessons just about myself and what I need to do to constantly work on myself to bring my best foot forward to the business and grow it every day, but also about investing and negotiation. It was a really beautiful conversation. I think everybody in the comments would agree. And we're so grateful for your time. So thank you, Lisa. And everybody, where can they find your book to go purchase it?
Yeah. So you can go to thebadbitchempire.com. It is on Amazon, it is on Barnes and Noble. So today is officially publishing date. So I'm really grateful to be here with you and with all of you today. It means a lot. It hit #1 new release in private equity on Amazon. So we want to keep the momentum going. And so if you do publish it, if you do purchase it, there is a form on the site where you can also get some bonuses.
Amazing. Thank you. Everybody follow her, and also stay tuned for next week for the conversation that she's going to have where she'll be giving away some small business loans.
Yes.
And on our side, everybody, if you're not part of 10th House, join it. There's nothing more valuable than having self-worth, but also having a community who can help you cut through the noise and navigate this tough journey. So we close our applications on Friday. And if you go to Female Founder Collective and then go to membership, you'll find the ability to sign up there.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Have you.
Bye.